Good morning, everyone, and you're most welcome to this morning's YouTube video on this glorious Saturday morning that we're having here today, anyway. So, I want to share with you just for a few moments some of I suppose, the things that I've learned over the last few years of being a self employed business owner. Some things that have worked out phenomenally for me, and some things that have absolutely spiraled to a descent and everything ended up in flames. And I suppose the real question that I want to ask today is why are so many of our businesses capped by the income that's coming in or by the revenue that we have, by the turnover? And if our revenue is capped, what is it actually costing our businesses? So I've taken down a few notes beside me. I'm going to be referring to these notes, and hopefully some of this will be a benefit to your business. And if it is, please maybe like and subscribe, or you might be able to share with somebody else or leave a comment, and I can answer any further questions that you have. So I suppose what brings us here today, and it's not physically, what brings us here strategically? And it's a question that was asked of me before by one of my mentors, and most likely it's because your business is receiving some friction. A lot of the time you're working incredibly hard, you're putting in the long hours, you're putting in a really hard graft, time away from your family just to keep that business going so that your family and that your employees can be the benefit of that. You're working hard, you're capable, but you end up being exhausted, and you start to realize that there's a ceiling. There's an absolute ceiling, and maybe your revenue has plateaued, maybe your profit margins feel tight, maybe growth in your business just feels exhausted. And maybe if you're honest, you're slightly frustrated because that's exactly the same way I was. I'm frustrated that I was working hard, earning a lot of money, but maybe not utilizing it in the correct way, and also always paying debt and paying different things. And that took me a long time to get the right mindset to be able to change those things. Now, each and every one of us know that we are capable of an awful lot more, but today is really about why that ceiling exists in our business, and more importantly, what it's costing you if you're not addressing the situation. Because this video is not about motivation, it's really about identity. Who are we? What really, allows our mind to tick in the right way so that we can understand what changes we need to bring about in our business. And really, it's the identity that quietly controls every single thing in our business. So each and every one of us have what's called a financial thermostat. I remember the late great Jim Rohn and the late great Bob Proctor speaking about this in several of their talks. Every one of us have a financial thermostat. Some people have a financial thermostat of €70,000 per year. Someone else will have a thermostat of earning €1 million per year. Each and every one of us have that financial thermostat, which ask yourself, is that financial thermostat consistent? Has it bounced between similar numbers? Because most businesses hover, not randomly, it's actually predictable how that financial thermostat operates. And you see, every business has a financial thermostat, and most self-employed owners don't even realize that they install that. You might have a financial thermostat of 150,000 per year, where your neighbouring business might have a financial thermostat of 70,000 per year. For some people, 250,000 feels completely stressful. Someone else, 750,000 would seem completely unrealistic of a turnover in their business. So what happens when revenue spikes? So let's just talk about it for the next moment. Some people, when the revenue spikes, they'll get less emotional clarity. They'll create unnecessary complexity. And sometimes when momentum dips within a business, clients will leave, cash flow will tighten, energy will drop. And this happens not because you're incapable, it happens because your business growth exceeded your identity. So everything really boils down to the identity. Do you ever ask the question, some months you have a phenomenally great financial month, you earn phenomenal money, and within another month or two, it dips back to where it was originally. Again, that boils down to identity. It boils down to what's called calibration. I suppose I just want to share for a second a story that I have from one of my own clients. And it's Sharon was earning nearly €110,000 per year in her business, and it was a service-based industry she was in. And she had a breakthrough year where she turned over 260,000. And something fascinating happened, that she started to apologize for her growth, which really amazed me, because although she was getting great business in, she all of a sudden, when she reached that €260,000, she stopped pushing for the contracts. She started to hesitate in different areas. She started to become cautious, and she started to question the decisions that she was making. But that was really frustrating to hear that. But within an 18-month to 2-year period, her business had come back down to about €140,000. So again, it had just slightly gone above what she was originally earning, 110,000, now at 140,000, but it had dropped down from 240. So what we've seen is that her financial thermostat is geared at about €140,000 per year. And it's amazing how when we start to earn a lot of money, we become very cautious with that. And again, that goes down to mindset. It goes down to that identity. So where is your identity when it comes to earning money and when it comes to having a particular income? So what happens if you don't change? Look, referring to again the notes here. If nothing changes, you're just going to stay in the exact same position. Now, that's a simple term. Each and every one of us know that. But it's important that we change, because we have to become uncomfortable. We've often heard the line, you need to become comfortable at getting uncomfortable. And that's not an easy situation to be in. You're working hard and you may slightly grow. But remember, if you don't change your identity, you're going to remain dependent on yourself. You're never going to fully detach from the business itself. You're never going to delegate fully. You're never going to give the responsibility to the people that want the responsibility. And because if they don't get that responsibility, they're never going to get that opportunity to grow within the business themselves. You're going to stay in that reactive mode. And the deeper cost in all of this is that your potential never really fully expresses itself. I could write a book about it, because that's exactly what happened to me in my business until I made the changes that I needed to change. And if you don't make those changes, and if you don't make the changes to your identity so that you can create more income in your business, you end up creating resentment, not towards everyone else, but towards yourself in the end. Because deep down, you know that you could have built an awful lot more, but you stayed in that comfort zone. The comfort zone is an incredibly dangerous zone to be in. Why do I talk so much about, income strategy and creating wealth and earning money? The main reason is because I was in that situation where I wasn't earning the money that I needed, and it affected me and it affected my family. And it's a situation that I don't want to see any business owner ever be in again. And that's why when I mentor businesses and do different coaching programs with them, it's so that they can change that shift in identity, so that they can create more, that they can be more, and that they can do more, and that they can offer more to their family, their friends, and their employees. But, when we talk about identity, the word self-image really comes into mind. And there's so many different books and so many different talks on self-image. But what is self-image? Self-image really is the internal blueprint of how you see yourself. It was formed through your childhood. It was formed through your environment. It was formed through your school teachers. It was formed through your grandparents. And it was something that you never even knew you were forming, but it just started to form. It also formed through the past results that you got. How many times in the past have you maybe sat an exam and you might have got a D in that exam, and you feel that that's exactly where you should be? But the truth is that if there was a different way of thinking or a different way of doing things, you would have done that differently. But it's not your fault. It's just the way that we were programmed. Again, that's our identity. And unless that changes, we're never going to make that change in our business and in our lives. It really starts to sabotage us in what we do. So I suppose the real deep question that I want to ask the people is that if tomorrow your revenue doubled, would your identity support it? Would you lead stronger? Would you delegate more consistently? Would you raise your standards? Or would you panic? Would you micromanage? Or would you work longer hours? It really depends. And each and every one of us, can have that emotional reaction. Do we ever ask the question why One client struggles to raise prices while the other client or the other business has absolutely no problem raising the prices and has that belief that when they raise the prices, they're going to get the money that's required. A lot of this is about awareness, and it's about instilling what we've been taught, implementing what we've been taught into our businesses. So look, you can understand everything that I've said over the last 10 minutes. But if you don't revert to making that change, you're going to be in the exact same place next week, next month, next year, in the next 5 years. Because identity really is in the subconscious. It's the only way we can change this is by repetition, by our environment, by our language, by our standards, by our proximity. And the standards are so important. How can we raise our standards so that we can bring about that change in our business, that we can bring about that change to our family life, and that we bring about that change to those who surround us? But identity requires an installation of certain structures, and that really boils down to deliberate reconditioning of the mindset. It requires repetition, and it requires accountability. Everyone needs that accountability to be able to bring about that change that we need in our lives. And that's why some business owners make that breakthrough and others don't. So look, before we finish up, I want you just to remember something, that the frustration in your business isn't always effort. It's unrealized potential. It's the quiet knowing that you could build an awful lot more. And it's the invisible that keeps you always playing safe. I've been there, working hard, doing well, but just hovering around. And the hardest part wasn't even the revenue. It was the knowing that I hadn't fully stepped into who I was capable of becoming. But when your identity shifts, your decisions change, your standards change, your conversation changes, I should say, and the revenue follows. That revenue changes. So ask yourself today in your business, how can I change my identity? How can I change my self-image and bring about that change that your business requires? Look, if I can help you in any way, even if it's just 5-10 minute conversation, please just send me a message, give me a comment in the YouTube post. And for the rest of the day, I wish you well, and I wish you success in your business. And thanks for taking the time to watch this. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.